All right, Laker Nation, this is the biggest question, I believe, around this basketball team this offseason, so I want you guys to weigh in. If you want the Lakers to break up the big three of LeBron, Russ, and AD, then like this video. If you don't, just don't like it, or just type don't down in the comments section. I want to know from the purple and gold, do you want the big three to be broken up this offseason? You're watching the Lakers Report by Chat Sports. I am Harrison Graham. Hope everybody is having a wonderful start to their weekend. We got some rumors around Russell Westbrook and LeBron James. So let's go ahead and dive in. Could Russ be staying in LA for this next season? Sam Amick of The Athletic kind of pondered this possibility of keeping Russ in LA. Here's what he had to say recently. Quote, when the decision was made to fire Vogel, sources say his handling of Westbrook and the inability to find a way to make him more productive part of the program were among the factors that played a big part. There was a strong sense that it was on Vogel to make the Westbrook experiment work, and the fact that it didn't led to questions about whether Westbrook had been put in a position to succeed. That sure smells like the hope of a Russ revival to me. He also added this, and how's this for a tidbit to tie this thread up? Phil Jackson is known to have been a fan of Westbrook's throughout his career. Sources say Phil Jackson has no interest on taking this coaching job or any other himself. Let's stop that rumor right here. But his view of Westbrook is relevant. As we've established, Jackson's voice matters again. Let me just put this plainly. The Russ experiment failed, period. And that's not solely because of Vogel. I would argue it's more on LeBron, Pelinka, and AD because they wanted to bring in Russ. They had a trade for Buddy Hield on the table for a 3-and-D type of player and more cap flexibility that you would have had you traded for him instead of Russ. They went all in on Russ. Sure, maybe Vogel didn't put him in the best positions to succeed, but there's a track record now of Westbrook not meshing well with other stars. It happened once again in Los Angeles. Pick one to trade. If you're dumping one, who you dumping? Type LBJ for LeBron James. Type AD for Anthony Davis. Type RW for Russell Westbrook. I'm getting rid of Russ if I can, but obviously that contract is hard to move. Pin comment on today's video. Pick one of these players to trade. All right, the Lakers went 11-10 in games where all three of the big three played, so it's not like, AD after the season, oh, well, if we were healthy, it would have been different. Would it have, though? Because, I don't think Kendrick Nunn, who he referenced, was going to make a 20-game difference. The injury certainly made things harder, but let's be honest, that's a quarter of a season, and you went 500. This is not a team that was flourishing with this big three together. Now, they didn't get to play a ton together, so I guess that's valid, but 21 games isn't exactly a tiny sample size either. Now, statistically, Russ had a decent year, 18.5, 7.5, 7, and then, 44.4% from the field is kind of right on his career average. We know he can't shoot threes, but he's always been in the, mid-40s in terms of percentages from the field. It's just the mind-blowing decision-making at times. It's the, inability to knock down threes. It's shooting bad shots in crunch time. We know for these reasons and others, Russ's trade value isn't that good because his contract is brutal. Doesn't mean they should just run it back, though. Like, if you can get out of his contract, do it. Like, you got it. Changing up the coach isn't enough. I mean, this roster needs to look different next year. And if you run it back with this big three, you don't have money to make big changes otherwise. It's just going to be a lot of the same from last year where you have vet minimum guys filling out this roster, and I think that's a bad idea if you're Rob Pelinka and this Lakers organization. Now, what's a good idea is taking advantage of these hats that are on sale and buying one today at chatsports.com/Lakers hats. Lots of different ones for you guys to pick from. Flat bills, curved bills, black, white, different colored hats. Gold ones should be in there as well. You got this awesome palm tree flat bill also. That's a good looking one with summer just around the corner. Chatsports.com/Lakers hats. Go ahead and represent Laker Nation all year long by buying one of these. Is LeBron James not going to be traded by the Los Angeles Lakers? That's what we're going to discuss here on the Lakers Report by Chat Sports. Doesn't seem to be that way. Latest reports coming out that the Lakers will not shop LeBron this offseason. If anything, they could work on an extension. Sam Amick of The Athletic had this one saying, quote, if LeBron James ultimately decides against signing an extension with the Lakers in August, sources say Jeannie Buss wouldn't see his desire to play out the final season of his contract as a reason to consider trading him. Without an extension, James' current deal will expire after next season, in which he's owed $47.1 million. It's a natural question to ask in these sorts of situations, as the notion of LeBron leaving the Lakers empty-handed by signing elsewhere in 2023 would be less than ideal. Still, all signs point to the year-by-year approach being considered acceptable by the Lakers, so as long as the relationship with James is still in a good place. Not surprising that they're not going to trade him, right? Because you can't trade LeBron right now. Unless LeBron, this is the only way you trade LeBron. Hey, Rob Pelinka, Jeannie Buss, I'm not coming back after next year. I wouldn't mind if you traded me. Unless he comes to you directly and says, hey, I'm not re-signing. I'd be okay if you moved me to one of these teams. I'm sure he'd give him a list. That's the only way you trade him. If he's committed to being there, you keep him because the numbers show he's still a top 3, top 5 player in the world. You just got to get him re-energized, get this team better around him. If Anthony Davis is going to be here, he's got to play better. He's got to get healthy. You don't trade LeBron, even at this point in his career, unless he comes to you and either demands a trade or says, hey, last year my deal, I think you guys should hit the reset button anyway. Just trade me. Unless that happens, I ain't trading LeBron if I'm the Lakers. That is just moronic at the end of the day. Now, what would be your one-word reaction if LeBron got traded? I think mine would be wow, because that would obviously be, shocking. It'd be the best player in NBA history to get traded. What would you say, though, if LeBron were to get traded? Now, Laker fans, we are closing in on 44,000 subscribers. We're halfway there in terms of the gap between 43 and 44. We've crossed 43,500. Need 478 more of you Laker fans to subscribe. So if you haven't already, hit that big red button. We got 4, 5, sometimes 6, 7 videos per week here on the Lakers Report. The latest news and rumors coming at you here on the Lakers Report by Chat Sports. So subscribe. All right, Dan Woike of the LA Times added this when it comes to LeBron, saying, quote, after conversations with some rival general managers and scouts around the NBA, the first thing to know is that if James were available via trade, and to be 100% clear, there are zero indications that's the case, it wouldn't be 29 other teams bidding on him. James is more than a player. He's a culture that dominates every aspect of your organization. You have to be willing to take that on. Now, at this point in his career, you got to accept he's going to miss some games. Injuries have piled up a bit. You're probably looking at 65 games a year. That's what you're hoping for. Get him ready for the playoffs. But we know he's a hooper when he's healthy. I mean, he had his best year ever as a scorer at over 30 points per game. We know he can distribute. He can rebound. He doesn't defend possession in and possession out, but when he needs to lock in crunch time, he can still defend at a very high level as well. He's good on that end. He shot the ball well from last year. I mean, 52.5%, 36% from three. A lot of tough shots he was taking this year because this offense was clunky with Russ. I mean, he's still incredible. I mean, make no mistake about it. And sure, 29 teams may not come calling, but 10 or 12 will. Like, you're telling me the Charlotte Hornets wouldn't take on LeBron James just because he gathers a lot of attention and he wants decision-making? Yeah, they would. They would love to have LeBron. A lot of teams would because you know what he does? Everywhere he goes, he wins a title, at least one. Even if there's some drama along the way, he's going to bring you a championship. Brian Windhorst, who's been on LeBron's hip since they were in high school, had this to say: LeBron wants to be a Laker. Regardless of what he has said in moments of frustration last year, regardless of his concept of playing with his son or someday retiring a Cav or whatever, LeBron wants to be a Laker. He wants to live in Los Angeles. He loves living in LA. He still thinks he still believes he can take the Lakers to heights. He wants to be a Laker. I fully expect him to be back next year. Again, unless he demands a trade, moving him doesn't make sense right right now, but you got to tinker the roster. There's no doubt. You got to make decisions on Russ and AD, where they fit in. Ideally, you can move Russ, get that contract out from under you, even if you have to trade a future first. As long as LeBron's playing for you, draft picks aren't the priority. I'm sorry. That's just the reality. If 5 years from now the Lakers suck for 2 or 3 years, who cares if LeBron gets you another title? Because that is what you were chasing when you have one of the all-time greats on your roster. Now, grade LeBron's play this past season, A, B, C, D, or F. Still give it like an AA minus. I mean, he was tremendous. Now, you could argue that he should have been a better leader at times, that he checked out down the stretch. But you know what? I might have checked out too if some of the shenanigans that went on this year went on my team. So A, B, C, D, or F. We'll see you soon. Happy Mother's Day coming up to the mothers out there, and have a great weekend, Laker Nation.